Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing a repurchase or not, which is something that I do pretty sporadically on my channel. I want to go through all the palettes in my collection and decide whether these are palettes that I make good decisions on. I've done a few of these, so hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm not the only one out here doing them. There's plenty of other people that have done them as well. I do them in terms of, I have this palette in my collection already. If I lost it today, would I repurchase it? But also, if it were something that came out on the beauty scene today and I didn't have it in my collection, would I purchase it, period? So I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. If it does, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, I'm just out here truly just talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup. It's what soothes my soul. It is my self-care, and I hope that you find that this channel can also be part of your self-care routine. I appreciate every single one of you for being here today. And if all that sounds like something you're interested in, awesome. Let's roll into this repurchase or not. All right. I feel like some kind of way because I feel like my neighbors can hear me, because if I can hear them, they can hear me, and I can definitely hear their TV, but also at the same time, I'm not closing that window because it's hot in here and I'm wearing long sleeves. I guess I could change. I'm not gonna. So there's that. Okay, so let's talk about this. I've got 10 palettes here that I roll through a decision wheel. These are the palettes that it pulled for me. So I went into my collection, pulled all those out. So I have kind of a plethora of different things here, and I don't think I've talked about any of them lately in any other video. So the first one is going to be this one here. This is the Huda Beauty New Nude. This is an eyeshadow palette that I honestly can tell you I love so dang much. And the only thing that I could say that I don't love about it is these two shadows right here, which are glitters. And because of those glitters, I neglect to pick up this palette a lot. I don't want those glitters all over the place, and they do get all over the place. I think I might need to dig them out, but at the same time, I know that if I dig them out, then I'm not gonna love like the look of this palette, so I'm not gonna try and reach for it. If this was a palette that came out into the market today, I don't think I would purchase this. I really don't, because of those glitters, because this side of the palette is very ho-hum. It's really this side of the palette that draws my attention, and of this side of the palette, there is only, 7 shades that I would use. These 2 shades would be completely out for me. So I do love this color story, but I have to be honest, the Natasha Denona Retro reminds me an awful lot of it, only a better version of it, and a formula that I 100% stand behind. So I don't think I'd repurchase this palette. That, I think, shocks me. The next one is this one. This is the Rabanne handbag palette, and this one is in Paradise Lost Then Found. And you know what? This is a beautiful green palette. I think that this one, of all the Rabanne palettes I have, was my favorite one to use. Green is my favorite color. So I am gonna say yes, I would repurchase this. Knowing what I know now about this formula, I wouldn't like go out, if I lost this palette, I wouldn't go out and replace it because I don't love this formula. And the thing about it is this one is the best of the palettes in my humble opinion. I do like this one a lot, but the other ones that I purchased and brought into my collection from this brand, I just don't love. The formula is just mediocre at best, and this is a luxury, so to speak, or prestige like price point, and I just don't think it's worth it. I just don't. Would I repurchase this? If I saw this today and it was new on the market today, would it draw my attention and would I purchase it? Absolutely yes. Would I repurchase this if I lost it today? Probably not, because I know how I feel about the formula. I will tell you though that of the 3 that I have in my collection from this brand, this one is my favorite. So I'm going to stick that in the yes, I'd probably be drawn to it and purchase it if it presented itself in my face today for the very first time. But would I repurchase it if I lost it out of my collection? The answer would have to be no. The next one I have is this one. This is the Tarte Tartlet in Bloom. And interestingly enough, this is not a palette that ever drew my attention to it. However, I did get it in gratis and I love this palette. And at the end of the day, I do think that this is a worthy palette in my collection. And I do think that I'd want to repurchase it if I lost it today. Is it a palette that drew my attention when I first saw it on the market? No. Is it a palette that would likely draw my attention today? No. But I am going to put it in the yes, I'd repurchase it pile, because I do think I would repurchase it knowing what I know about that palette specifically. And that brand, Tarte's got some really great, just really easy to use eyeshadows, and I mean that's what sets them apart from a lot of those like middle of the line like prestige brands. To be honest, I think that they hands down win over Too Faced and win over Urban Decay as far as ease of use. Speaking of, let's talk about this one. This one is the Too Faced Italian Spritz, and this one also came to me in gratis, and interestingly enough, it did not sway me to want it when it first came out. But I think if I were looking at this today with what I know to be true about my eyeshadow palette collection, my aesthetics for eyeshadows, and what I know to be true about this palette, I do think that I would repurchase this. And that shocks me because Too Faced is not a brand that I ever am interested in buying from. Next, let's do this one. This is the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette, and I am a Manny MUA stan, but when it comes to this palette, this is not a palette I would repurchase. I am a colored lover, and this has quite a bit of color in it, but these blues are quite frankly some of the hardest blues for me to work with in my collection, which says a lot because I have the Norvina Pro Pigment palettes, and that Pro Pigment palette that's the blue one, which I think is like the 2, right? So hard to use. These ones are harder, and it's just this one and this one, but this is like a shade that I don't even understand why it's in here. Honestly, it's like a shimmer but not a shimmer. It's a black with glitter in it, and I feel like there's enough glitter that it shows up on your eye look, but not enough glitter to make it a shimmer, and therefore it's this matte that kind of is like skippy because of the glitters in here. Now, that's not me saying that this is a shitty formulation, because it's not. I don't think for 2 snips of a second that the Lunar Beauty brand has poor formulation quality. I think that their formula is actually top notch. This one just is not one of my favorite Lunar Beauty palettes, and I did get along with it. I did some really gorgeous looks with it, but I wouldn't repurchase it. If it was new on the market today, with me having cut the cord in my collection mentality for Lunar Beauty, finally, I wouldn't repurchase this palette. And knowing what I know about it, I wouldn't repurchase it if I lost it today. The next one is this. This is the One Size Patrick Star Visionary palette. And listen, this I got in FabFitFun. Again, another palette I didn't choose to bring into my collection. It was just one that happened to land in my collection. And while this palette performs really well, and I did like all the eye looks that I got from it, and I feel like it is a good staple palette to have. It just isn't one that I would purchase, either repurchase for my collection if I lost it, or purchase if I didn't have it in my collection and it was brand new on the market today. It's just not one that draws my attention at all. Now, I do think that this palette has some, you know, idiosyncrasies to these multiple different browns in here that are slightly different than you're going to see in a lot of other palettes. Like I think this one leans very like mustardy and is quite a bit different of a mustard brown or yellow toned brown than I think I have in my collection overall. And I do really love this like camouflage green that's not quite camo but also not quite sage. It's like this perfect balance in between. I do think that this has some beautiful colors in it, but this blue is awful. And this shade, which is the shade that, I mean, totally drew my attention to this palette in the first place when I did get it in FabFitFun, is not a great shadow. I mean, it is crusty, it's dusty, it's kind of just this, I wanted it to be a periwinkle so bad, and it's just more of a lavender gray, and it just kind of looks dingy, and it just kind of blends away when you're blending it out on your lid space. This is a palette that could easily be lost in my collection, and I don't think I'd know the difference except for that I have an inventory that tells me what's in my collection. So would I repurchase it if I lost it today? No. And also, no, it would not be a palette that drew my attention if it was brand new on the market today. Let's talk about this. This is 100 times a yes. So number one, this is a melt palette. Melt palettes always draw my attention. Number two, it is the other half of a Sugar Skull set. Sugar Skulls also draw my attention 100% of the time. And number three, this color story gives me life. Every single time I look at this, I'm like, ooh, let's get that on our eyeballs. Let's do it today. I love the oranges and the like yellow tones in here with a little bit of brown to deepen up the outer V. I love these greens over here. Green is my favorite color. Again, I love this palette. This would be 100 times yes. Yes, if it was a palette that was lost in my collection that I had the option to replace if I lost it today, yes, I would replace it. And yes, if this palette came onto the market today for the first time, I had never seen it before, yes, I would want to purchase it. So this is 100 times yes, yes, yes. Even knowing what I know about this palette and the kind of like special way you have to like finesse a melt eyeshadow, even then, yes. Then I have this one from Natasha Denona. This is the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. And yeah, I kind of go back and forth with this one because I love this side of the palette. I'm not 100% sold on those 6 shades there. But because a majority of the palette is tones that I like to wear on my eyes, and because this is a Natasha Denona palette, I'm going to say yes. Yes, I would replace this if I lost it today and could. But also, yes, if this did show up as a Natasha Denona offering today, was its first day on the market, I would want this palette. I just know enough about myself to know that it doesn't matter what Natasha Denona puts out, I want it. Like, let me just tell you, this whole I need a warm palette, y'all know I'm getting that palette. I'm trying to pause on my makeup rehab for the month until I have picked up that palette because I know that I'm going to pick it up. but I also know that I can do makeup rehab for August anyways. You know, no matter what she puts out, I'm gonna replace it or repurchase it. That brings us to this one. This is the Natasha Denona Star palette. Now, this is not a palette that a whole heck of a lot of people have that I know of, because you hardly ever hear about it. You hardly ever see it. But this happens to be one of my favorite Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. And I think I talked about this one recently, actually. It's the only one that I think I talked about recently in my favorite fall eyeshadow palettes thing that I did earlier in this month. Well, yesterday as I'm talking to you, but you'll have seen it earlier in this month than this. This actually is such a beautiful palette. I really love this like blue, green, brown shade here that's kind of shifty. I really love this like topper over here. I love that it's got like more of a pink kind of like pretty side, and then it's got kind of the fall like grungy side. I love this palette so dang much, and I've had it for years and didn't really realize how amazing this palette was when I first picked it up. I just knew that I wanted it because it was pretty, and I thought it was really cool that it has like these two different 9-pan eyeshadow palettes from Natasha Denona. I love everything about this palette. Even these golds in here, which I don't really love golds. I think that they are just a different kind of gold. They're kind of like more of a antique looking gold, and that is inspiring to me. They're like dirty and industrial. I just think that this palette has so much variety to it that I would definitely repurchase it if it were new on the market today. I would also want to repurchase it if it was a palette in my collection that I lost. The last one that I have is this one here. This is the Glamlite paint palette, and this was their first paint palette, and honestly the palette that drew me to Glamlite at all. And would I repurchase this today? You know, I have to say probably no. This one is so leaky. The answer is no, and the reason why is because it's so big and so absolutely absurd to try to store. The storage on this is crazy. I have to keep it in its box, and its box is big and bulky. I would have to say no. It's very basic, and that sounds really horrible to say, but because it is all primary, these are probably, you know, like of all the colors that I wear on my eyes, primary colors are probably the least of the colors that I wear on my eyes. I love color. You all know I love color. But these are, like these three, sure, but these three look the exact same on an eye look. The rest of them, not so much. I really just don't wear them. So I would have to say, based on what I know about this palette, would I repurchase this if it was lost in my collection? The answer is no. And would this draw my attention today if it were new on the market? And the answer is maybe for a minute. And then I would realize that they're all primary colors, and I don't really wear primary colors enough to have a palette this big. This is such a pain in the ass to store. It really is. And I do love, now they came out with a second one, the Paint Pro, and it is smaller and it is like tertiary colors. I love that one. I would probably repurchase that one. This one I definitely would not. So of the 10 palettes that I brought in, I have 4 that I would not repurchase, and 4 from, you know, these 2 specifically are from 2 of my favorite brands. So it's really surprising to me, but like the reasoning why for both of these, it makes sense to me. This one also, I really do love Glamlite. I think that they have a really great formula, but I just don't use primary colors like that. And the 6 that I would keep, I think that the only one that really surprises me is this one here, because I didn't really love this brand as a whole. But I do think that I would still want to pick up this one palette just to have something from the brand, but also because that one is a really good, that one's a really good quad as opposed to the other quads that I have. The rest of them, these two are great because these weren't even a choice of mine to bring into my collection. So I'm really happy that I would pick them for my collection. They would draw my attention today if they came out today. But with that said, that's what I got for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this really quick, just jaunt through a few of the palettes in my collection and deciding whether I think that they are all that or not all that they're cracked up to be. Would I want them in my collection today if they were brand new on the market, or would I repurchase them if I lost them overall? Would I want to repurchase them? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. I would be sure happy to hear from you. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye friends.